everyone, this is actually part 2 of the video MSW first year realities versus expectations and advice to first year students. So if you haven't watched part 1, make sure you check it out right here. So I tried to reframe this list into a list of questions with some of my own context in them. In my real life, I try not to give any unsolicited advice, so I don't want to give you all any unsolicited advice. Just know that this is my perspective and just stuff that I encourage you to think about. So the first thing to think about is, what is your time management and organizational system? You will probably be expected to keep track of all of your deadlines and assignments on your own, especially if you have other responsibilities such as family responsibilities, home responsibilities, work responsibilities, and you're going to have to figure out a way to get all of it done or offload your work to someone else. I personally use my bullet journal. As you know, I have a couple different videos on bullet journals for grad students, and I hope to have even more in the future. I use my bullet journal. I also use Google Calendar. I have multiple different ways to lay out the same information because things are useful for different reasons. And so that's sort of my system. This question applies to thinking about your grad school work on a daily and weekly basis, as well as thinking about it in a more long-term timeline. You know, how are you going to schedule major personal work or field placement related events? Will you have to leave a full-time job, reduce your hours, get an extra part-time job to pay for tuition? Those are questions to think about. And will you have to move during the program? Especially if you're an online student, you do have that flexibility. However, you do have to think about, when is that going to happen in accordance to the calendar with your field placement and everything. I know that if you are married and have a family, I am not. I do know that some of my classmates have families and are married where they have to relocate because their spouse relocated, and that all goes into your whole calendar with school. So, think about that calendar and timeline, not just in the short-term frame, but also in the long-term frame. Guidance number 2 is, what is your personal connection to every piece of material that you engage with in school? So this is helpful in terms of identifying your personal stake and your purpose in the field of social work. Oftentimes in assignments, you'll have the choice to explore a topic of your choosing, and this is a great opportunity to dive in deeper about something that you're very passionate about. Some advice that one of my professors gave me was to do all of my assignments on a particular subject matter so that I would have a portfolio of writing after I graduate, which would make me more marketable in certain kinds of careers, especially in the policy area. So my topics, my assignments, I usually choose to focus my assignments on topics of race, immigration, intergenerational trauma, and youth development. Those are some of the areas that I'm particularly interested in, but other people have other passions. Sometimes you do have to do group assignments where you have to compromise on the subject. So I did do a group project on an area that I never would have picked on my own, the opioid crisis. It's just really not something that affects my personal life really, but I did that and I learned a lot from it. And I also, for my particular portion of the assignment, looked more deeply at something that is a part of the opioid crisis and response, and that is race. Guidance number 3 is, what resources are available to you and how comfortable are you using them? In my online program, they often mention that professors wish that students reach out to them more, and I would also encourage it. It's something that I did closer to the beginning of the program, but I kind of got lost in my own stuff. and didn't do it much in the middle and end of the program. But the professors are always happy to talk with students about the material and even about how to improve the course. That's something that I talked with one of the professors with, because as I mentioned, I was very frustrated with sort of not feeling challenged enough. I expressed that to the professor, and so I hope that there's something that they can do if more students also feel that way. There's also probably a lot of different resources in terms of what your school can provide for academic support. I know my school has like a writing center and a tutoring center. They're not services that I've used other than the writing workshop before the program started. However, I do know that they offer a lot of things for individual assignments. And Purdue, the best resource for APA formatting. Think about other things that you have access to when you're in school. Things like journal databases and the libraries. I use these for personal reading. I actually checked out The Revolution Will Not Be Funded and through my school, and I am currently reading that now. And there's also probably tons of computer software that's available to you as a student because you're paying tuition. We use Zoom for our classes, and I have access to the commercial license for Zoom, whatever that premium license is, so that I can use it to schedule other kinds of meetings. I can schedule hangouts with my friends on Zoom, and that's available because I have it through my tuition. I was actually helping out a classmate of mine because he didn't know that we actually each had our own personal Zoom account. And yeah, just like be very aware of those things because you can use them and you won't have to pay extra for it because you're already paying for it with your tuition. I also was able to get Microsoft Office for my computer, which is something they very much advertise because it's very useful for students who have to write papers every week. And even the software that I use to edit these videos is free through my college. Well, not free. I pay tuition and I have access to it. There's plenty of other stuff. I just recently downloaded the antivirus software from my school. There's other sorts of like statistical analysis programs, visualization programs, lots of different things that are like more technological, things that I don't really need. But like, if you are interested in them for a hobby, I think that like there's so much stuff that you can look into. And I don't have too much experience with this last one, but I do know that there are other benefits to being a student, such as student discounts. I know that sometimes if you go to a place and show your student ID, you're able to get discounts on like food or retailers, as well as discounts for professional memberships, such as memberships for National Association for Social Workers, or discounts on different webinars or professional development conferences. Those are not things that I've personally really have experience in, but I do know that they exist. You know, these things exist because you're paying loads of money for tuition, so why not take advantage of them while you still have that student status? Fourth thing to consider is, who are your allies? So your allies might be people in your personal life that are supportive of your academic journey. They may be mentors who are social workers in the field. And I also encourage you to identify some classmates who can also be your allies. This is especially helpful for things like group projects. Some students in my program started this unofficial Facebook group for students where we can talk more candidly with each other, and I've seen people help each other out with assignments and things like that through the Facebook group. So sometimes like the infrastructure for the school communications, like I know that my school uses Blackboard like many other schools. There's like a community lounge forum, but like nobody goes in there. There's other more easier ways to communicate with people, and so you know, maybe you can go and start that kind of thing for your own program or seek out people who have that. Finding the peer support in an online program is a little bit more challenging than in an in-person program. Usually I have taken courses with like the same handful of students because I usually take courses at the same time every semester, and usually it's the same people just taking courses at the same time. And usually there's 1 or 2 students in my cohort or in my class that I feel like, I really like their perspective, and I wish that we could be friends and chat in person about, things that come up in class related to social work. So those group projects are really great ways to get to know people and, gain that support network. I know that after my first group project, I have everyone's number in my group. So when we take in future courses together, we can ask each other questions about assignments and things like that. 5th is, how will you practice self-care? If your program is like mine, it honestly feels non-stop. I just finished my first year and my second year is starting in 2 weeks. There is barely any time to breathe. And I know that it'll only get more challenging as the 3 years goes on, because we're adding more difficult coursework and adding more hours for our field placements. But I used to try to take 1 day off meaning from work. I'm not working anymore, but just take 1 day to myself to recuperate. A tradition that I had was to go to the Korean spa in between semesters, and that is unfortunately not possible anymore. I would also block off time on my calendar on a weekly basis to go to yoga class, get out of the office, get out of my home, and go to the studio to sort of clear my mind before I went back home and started my schoolwork. And that self-care practice looks different for everyone. And so think about what do you need in order to take care of yourself? I also want to give some advice that pertains to field placements. However, I have not started mine yet, so I don't know, the legitimacy of my advice. But one question that my advisor has helped me with was thinking through, what do I want to learn in field placement? This was very challenging when it came for me to identify and finalize a field placement. First of all, it was just challenging because it seemed like no one was responding because we were in a pandemic. And then it came down to, I had a couple of choices. One that I absolutely I felt like I wanted to work here in the future type of thing. And then another one that was completely not something that I thought I would, consider, just something that was available. And, this question helped me sort of what do I want to learn in field placement? It sort of helped me narrow it down, because it felt like the thing that I wanted to do is already stuff that I'm capable of doing. Actually, it's a little bit more macro. Stuff like program development and facilitating groups. Stuff that I'm already familiar with, so I didn't feel like I was going to learn much in that placement, although it's somewhere where I hope to have established myself in the future, as a profession. But I chose a placement that I felt like I could learn a lot from. This is typically what they advise for your first year placement. If you are in a program where you do 2 placements, your first year is the one where you're a little bit outside of your comfort zone and maybe exploring. And your second one being, this is where I want to end up in my social work career. So that was very helpful advice that I heard actually from a student in that Facebook group. So always great to have peer support. And I am going to be starting my field placement in 2 weeks. I'm going to be at a public school. I am actually super, super excited. I know that school looks so much different this year for many students. And that just means that they need more support, and we need to be focusing on social emotional learning. We need to be building up different support networks for the families to be able to navigate all of this. So I'm super excited to play this role in this current moment in human history. And that is it for this video. For all of you who are returning to school this year or starting school this year, I hope you have a really great start to the school year and best of luck for the rest of the year. Give me a like if you found this information helpful for you and your grad school experience, or even thinking about going back to school. And leave a comment if there was something that is a piece of advice or a guiding question that you thought I missed. I upload videos on every Tuesday, so make sure you subscribe and follow along. I have a lot of really great videos planned for the future, some things that are a little bit different than the content I am currently put up, like things that are more related to like lifestyle and fashion and that type of thing. So you know, it's all going in here. This is everything. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good one. Bye!